Hey everybody, Pastor Josh here, and this is the weekly update for Redeeming Grace Church. It is Tuesday, May 24th of 2022, and just a few quick things for you. First of all, the worship service on Sunday mornings is now going to move from 10:30 to 10 a.m. for the rest of the summer. That is just to help you enjoy more of these beautiful days in the summertime. We won't have any 9:15 classes. We'll give all of our teachers and volunteers a break for that. We will have a prayer meeting still at 9:15 for those of you that are around. We still have our setup at 8:15, and then at 9:15 for those of us that are done setting up, we'll have a time of prayer just for various things each Sunday, and then 10 a.m. worship. So mark your calendars for that. Secondly, we plan to have a church picnic right after service on June 12th. So go ahead and mark your calendars for that. That'll probably be potluck style, either just in the grassy area outside the Journey, or it could be here at the Ministry Center. So we'll keep you posted on that. But mark the calendars, mark off lunchtime after church on June 12th, and plan to bring some games, some food, and we'll just enjoy some extra fellowship and connection time with each other on that day. The third thing is that there's a mission trip being planned to Las Vegas to work with underprivileged kids. And my wife is leading that. That'll be, I think, the last Sunday of June to the first Sunday in July. And it's going to be relatively inexpensive. I think less than $500 for each team member. That's if we get a team put together this week and can buy tickets, because I think tickets are only going to be $150 if we buy them this week and fly with Allegiant. There's a good opportunity there to keep the costs low. I think there's 2, maybe 3 people that are committed to go right now. It'd be great to have a team of probably 5 to 7. So a few more of you would really make a really effective team to go down and work with kids at a ministry with led by someone that's a dear friend of ours, Lauren McCammon. So we would we would love to hear from you this week as soon as possible to try to fill out that team. Also, this past Sunday night, we had a family meeting where we interviewed 3 potential elder candidates. That went well. We're going to have some follow-up with that, hopefully maybe even a vote on those elders in June. And so I'm going to be meeting with them this week just to process how that went, sort of evaluate if there's other information and things that maybe the members would like to have from them. So if you're a member and you were in that meeting, if you have some feedback for me on what else you would like to know as we figure out sort of how to recognize and affirm elders, we're figuring it out for the first time. So feedback from you on what you would like to know to be able to vote with confidence on these guys one way or the other is helpful. So the last thing I just want to mention is that the denomination that we're associated with, the Southern Baptist Convention, had a pretty significant report released this last Sunday. The Sex Abuse Task Force was demanded by the messengers. I was one of them in Nashville, that there be an investigation, an independent third-party investigation of our executive committee, which is one of many entities within the SBC, and their handling of reports of sexual abuse among clergy in the SBC churches. And so after plenty of wrangling, that task force was put together. They did their research and they released their 288-page report on Sunday of how some of the leadership within the SBC has handled reports of sexual abuse coming from churches in our convention. And the report is not great. It's not good at all. There was definitely a leader or 2 that were involved over the last 20 years and actually committing some sort of offense themselves that was discovered during the report. The more that's egregious in and of itself, but the larger volume of information is about victims who reported to the executive committee of being abused by clergy, and the executive committee not responding to that. Now, because we're not a top-down organization and each church is autonomous, the executive committee essentially dismissed and at times was pretty treated very poorly victims, both publicly in the media and personally, under the guise of our organization doesn't allow us to control churches, therefore we won't do anything with this information, and actually being pretty harsh about the motives of victims coming forward. And so that seemed to happen quite a bit. under the guise of fear of litigation and protection of the institution, as well as under the guise of saying that local churches are autonomous. It's not our job to worry about sex offense in the churches. All the while doing this, some of the key inside leaders, not everybody on the executive committee, but some of the leaders and staff, and certainly some of the lawyers, were actually compiling a list of the incidents that had been reported to them, including about 700 offenders. So they were keeping a list, but they were out of a fear of litigation, were not letting churches have access to that, which meant that these clergy were going from church to church to church and continuing to offend. So that's pretty egregious that victims were treated the way that they were, and under the guise of not wanting to control the churches and fear of litigation against the institution, were silent about letting churches know about past accusations that pastors had. So it's pretty clear that there is a way to be able to provide that information, at least credible reports, a list of people, almost like a sex offender registry of these are clergy who have been credibly accused or pled guilty to these conduct. That is something that our convention could do and just didn't. And so that's a pretty big deal. So there's been a lot of people who have resigned off the executive committee. There's been others that have been removed from leadership. And this next coming SBC meeting in Anaheim that's going to be happening in June, I'm going to attend and kind of represent our church and try to vote for the things that need to happen going forward. Personally, while I'm deeply grieved and sad and angry about how things have been handled, there has been smoke around this fire for a while. So I actually see it as a positive thing that these things have come to light, as difficult as they might be. They've been hiding in the corners. They've been cancer tumors undiscovered within the life of the convention, and now that they're open, they can be dealt with. And so while I think there's a temptation for many to want to just jump ship, and I totally understand that, to want to defund, to want to leave, I think that actually maybe what I would like to do is try to engage all the more, because now it's out in the open and it can be dealt with, and we can potentially see some renewal. We can see some best practices. We can learn from this, and maybe even in our own church think better and be more strategic about how we protect people from sexual abuse and how we help people who have endured it to be healed from it. So I think that while this is grievous and not an easy time to be a part of our association of churches, I do think my disposition is to go and engage and be a part of as much of a solution as possible, and to try to vote and advocate and help push, just like we did last year in Nashville, to push for this investigation, to now push again for us to implement best practices and to do the best that we can to turn from the processes that allowed this kind of sin to happen and go unchecked among our churches, while also protecting the autonomy of the local churches. So it's going to be a tricky thing to work out, but so if you want to read the report, just Google SBC Sex Abuse Task Force and you'll see the report, and you'll see so many media opinions about it. You'll see a lot of things that are helpful and unhelpful and all that. I'm just going to go right directly to the meeting, and I'm reading the report myself right now, and I've gotten lots of calls and had lots of discussions even this week, which is why this update video is coming kind of a day late, is that there's a lot of us, pastors, churches, and that I'm connected with, that are trying to process what do we do with this? How do we work for good? How do we respond to this? And so I've had a lot of conversations and tried to counsel different pastors and churches and how we're planning to handle that. My plan is for us to stay engaged. We can always leave at any time. Any family meeting we could vote to be out and be done with this thing. But I think that actually I wouldn't want to leave the convention now in a really sensitive time and just sort of leave it to the wolves, going, no, I think actually now there's some hope that things could be different going forward. I could be wrong. I've described it to a few people as like when your house is on fire, the first thing that you need to know is that there is a fire, right? And well, now we know that there is a fire. We assumed that there might be. That's why we pushed for this investigation. Now we know there is, and we have one of two options. Either the fire is too bad and we need to just escape, get out with our lives, some people are going to think that that's the case. It's just time to be out of this thing. Or there's an opportunity to kind of strategically try to put the fire out while before the whole house does go up. So I'm still of the opinion that maybe let's try to address the fire. And if it just feels like it's too much, it's not an association that helps us at all, then we can always leave. But at this point, I'd like to try to make an effort to work for good and put the fire out, so to speak. So I know we're just one church of 47,000. We're just a handful of members of the 16 million that are part of this largest Protestant denomination in the world. But we do have a voice. We can make a difference. Last year's meeting was really significant in order to expose what is happening. I think this meeting is going to be just as important as we now, with this information, try to together come up with better ways to operate going forward. And I would rather be engaged and work for good than stand on the sidelines and just criticize. So our association needs to own the issues. We need to correct what's wrong, and we need to try to make right what we can make right, and then try to move forward with healthier kingdom ministry that cares well for victims, that prevents predators from spreading and from continually offending, and then also make sure that we are embodying well what it looks like to live in godliness and proclaim a gospel message that frees us from sin and displays the glory of Christ. So we'll see what happens, but that's what's going on. Those are my just brief thoughts on the matter. If you want to talk more about it, I'd be happy to talk more with you about it. It is a serious thing, and we're a part of this large big tent organization, and so we're going to try to do our part in working for good within it. So you can pray for me as I interact with other people and help them think through what they should do, other churches, other pastors, and as I go to Anaheim and just steward my one little vote among the several thousand that will be there, to steward my one vote well, to try to work for good, promote righteousness, and see God's glory be manifest in whatever partnerships that we're a part of. So, all right, I love you. Thank you for being a part of our church. Don't forget all the things that are going on. Jump in, get connected with other people, come up with ideas for ministry. Both the picnic and the mission trip were not my ideas. Those were things that were brought to me that I went, yes. So if there's other things, the best ideas always come from you. So it always works best when I'm equipping you to do the work of ministry and running with your ideas. So if there's things that you'd love for our church to do or be involved in, pitch them my way, and I'll then pitch them back to you, and we'll try to do it together. So with all that, thanks for taking a few minutes to watch this. I love you, and I'll catch you next week. Bye.